In this video, I'll be using this simple design of input field and label to explain how we can get a smooth transition for our label to move from the center of my input field to the top of the input field. And this is a simple animation you can add to your form design for a better user experience. So let's get straight into the video. In my HTML document and in the body element, I'll create a div and give it a class name of container. Inside this div, I'll create another div and give it a class name this time of input field. In this input field, I'll add input elements and label for the username. So the inner text of the label should be enter username. I'll copy my div with a class of input field and duplicate it. And this time, for the input element, I'll change the type attribute to password, and I'll change the ID to password. And with the label, I'll change the 4 attributes and set the value also to password. The inner text of my label element should be enter password. And that's all we need for the markup. Now let's start the markup. Select our body and give it some properties to center our container div. Now, if you do not know how to center a div, I have a video on it. There's a link in the description. I have a video explaining into details how to center a div or a box or any element with CSS Flexbox. So be sure to check it out and learn how to center a div. We select our .container class, select the div with class of container, and give it a border, set the width and height properties for it. Next is to start the div with class of input fields. So .input field, and we also set the width and height of our input field div section. We set margins, and that'll be it. Next thing I'll do is to start the input element. Select our input and give it some border. We also set width and height properties for it, and set the font size to 1.2 em for the text inside our input elements. Also set padding left to 15 pixels. And we remove all outlines for our input field so that when you click on it, there will be no outline. Next, we start the label. So we select our label. We set the font size to 1.2 em. And then we set the cursor to text. Now pay close attention to this part. This is where the trick and the animation comes in. So I'll set the position property of my label to absolute. And then I'll go back to my input field div section, .input field, and set the position of this div section to relative. Now I do this because I want my label to be inside or be positioned relatively to the input field div section. So any position we set it, we assign, it will be relative to my input field div section. So the position is used together with the top, bottom, and left, and also right properties to further set the exact position where we want our elements to be. So in this case, I'll set the bottom positioning to 13 pixels and the left positioning to 15 pixels. This is where we initially want our label to be. Now the animation here is that whenever I click, or using the right word, whenever I focus on the input field, the label should move or should be repositioned from the center of my input field to the top of my input field. So it will move from this center to the input field, and the font size will decrease to make the animation just as we want it. And this is how you do it. So we select our input element with the focus pseudo class. That is when you click on it, we select any label element which is a sibling to it, with a tilde sign. Tilde sign means, or it stands, or it's used when we want to select the sibling of a certain element we've already selected. And in this case, the label is what we are selecting. It is a sibling to the input field, because when you come to our HTML file, they are both inside one div section, hence they are siblings. That is their logic. So it's my input field. When we focus with the focus pseudo class, we select any label which is a sibling to my input. And also with the input, we select the input again, and in this time with the valid pseudo class. Now, what this valid pseudo class does is, whenever the input field has some text or information which follows the right order or the right instruction for the input field. And in this case, when you come to an input field in the HTML, there is a required Boolean attribute. So far as there is an information or there is a text inside our input field, then the input field is valid. So with the input field, with a valid pseudo class, we select any label which is a sibling with the same tilde sign or tilde sign, and we style the label. So we set the bottom this time, we change it to 60 pixels. That will be the exact position we want to place our label. And then we shrink the font size a bit to 1.05 em, just like we see here. And this is the smooth animation. This is just the animation. So we come back to our label and add a transition of 0.4 seconds ease. And this is what we have here. Whenever we click on the input field, there will be a smooth transition. The label will transition smoothly from the center of my input field to the top of it, 80 pixels from the bottom and 15 pixels from the left. And then also decrease the font size a bit to make it look like whenever it comes inside the input field, it gets more closer, and when it goes to the top, it gets farther away from the viewer. So this is the simple logic behind it, and that is how you create this simple animation with input fields and labels, and also with positioning property in CSS. So I hope you got to the end of this video, and if you got to the end, I hope this video helped you out. And then try and add this whenever you are creating input fields or creating forms or creating any project that will require input fields and labels. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and be part of the family, and watch out for more web development content. Thank you, and see you in my next video.